I'm your host, G.I. Wingnut. Welcome back to my channel. In this episode, we're going to be taking a look at this book called Atlantis and Lemuria by Rudolph Steiner. It was originally published in 1911. There's an episode that I did, I'll try to remember to link it in the description, about Rudolph Steiner, founder of the Anthroposophical Society, and how he was an acolyte of Helena Blavatsky, which is where he picked up the Atlantis and Lemuria story. So in this particular series, we're going to be looking at this text, the submerged continents of Atlantis and Lemuria, their history and civilizations, being chapters from the Akashic records by Rudolph Steiner, acolyte of Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, and founder of this groovy little organization, sarcasm intended, known as the, co-founder of the Theosophical Society and founder of the Anthroposophical Society. Anyway, this is the authorized translation from the German, copyright 1911, Dr. Weller von Hook, in the United States of America. In view of the many unauthorized translations of Dr. Rudolph Steiner's works, the publishers begged to give notice that all authorized editions issued under the editorship of Dr. Max Geisy bear the symbol of the overleaf, cross on pentagram. So there you go. Submerged Continents of Atlantis and Lemuria. Their History and Civilization by Rudolph Steiner, translated by Max Geisy, GA11, online since the 15th of August 2011. This early writing reconstructs events between the origin of the Earth and the beginning of the recorded history, and include a core investigation of the origins, achieved, and fate of the Atlanteans and Lemurians. All right, so I'm going to have to go deeper into that Atlantean myth and how it was actually originated with the Greeks as a thought experiment, but I'll do that at a later point. Back to the article, or the book. These remarkable lost, end quotes, quote, lost, end quote, root races develop the first concepts of good and evil, manipulated the forces of nature, laid the groundwork of all human legal and ethical systems, and defined and nurtured a distinctive yet complementary powers of men and women that brought humankind many centuries ago to its artistic, intellectual, and spiritual attainments. The subject matter of this book pertains to the social, economic, cultural, etc. life of the very ancient times. This work cannot be called scholarly in the usual narrow sense of the word, in that its method of obtaining information is not the usual scholarly one. However, responsible investigative technique and recording are emphasized. This book is the first English publication, a first edition, of Steiner's Aus der Akasha Chronik, GA11, number 11. It is presented here with the kind permission of Rudolph Steiner, Nachlass der Waldtang, Dornach, Switzerland. And I probably butchered the dickens out of that. I am an American after all. Anyway, this e-text is provided through wonderful work of the Theosophical Publication Society of London. Nice. So here's where we're going to get into a couple of definitions, and then I'll probably go ahead and do chapter 1 because chapter 2 starts getting kind of lengthy. Anyway, the submerged continents of Atlantis and Lemuria, chapter 1, from the Akashic records. I will define that for you momentarily. Chapter 2, the Atlantean forefathers. Chapter 3, the transition of the Atlantean into the Aryan root race. I will explain root races here in a moment. The chapter 4, the Lemurian era. Chapter 5, woman in the third root race. Chapter 6, humanity before the division of sex. Chapter 7, the beings of sex duality. Chapter 8, man's first ancestors. Holy cow. Am I going to also have to do L. Ron Hubbard's The History of Mankind? I might as well. Chapter 9, the first or polar race, and Chapter 10, the second or Hyborian race. Now, there's been some talk lately between myself and Laura over at Magical Mystery Church about these Hyperboreans, and we will dive deeper into that if you haven't already been following some of the work that she and I have been doing. Anyway, let's take a look at some definitions. Okay, so what is the Akashic record? Okay, so the access ancient knowledge and esoteric records, particularly the Akashic records, for insight and understanding. That's how the narrative goes. The Akashic records are a spiritual concept. Note that, spiritual concept, believed to be a non-physical vibrational library containing a comprehensive record of every thought, word, emotion, and intent ever expressed by all entities and life forms, past, present, and future, which means time is irrelevant. Continuing, this energetic archive is thought to exist on the mental plane, also known as the astral plane or Akasha, a concept rooted in Indian philosophy. Key characteristics. Bullet point 1, a repository of every thought, word, deed of every living being, including human and non-human entities. Bullet point 2, contains the entire past, present, and future of every soul. So that tells me that they're preaching predestination. All things are set on a course. There's nothing you can do to change it. That sounds pretty dangerous to me. Bullet point number 3, a compendium of knowledge of all life forms and entities. Bullet point number 4, believed to be encoded in a non-physical plane of existence, accessible through spiritual practices and meditation. Theosophical and anthroposophical perspectives. In Theosophy and Anthroposophy, the Akashic records are seen as a tool for spiritual growth and self-discovery. They are believed to contain, first bullet point, contain the history of Atlantis and other civilizations. Bullet point 2, record the thoughts, words, and deeds of every individual, including their karma and spiritual evolution. Bullet point 4, provide insight into past, present, and future of human beings and the planet. And bullet point number 4, offer guidance for personal and collective spiritual development. According to the Akashic records, according to various sources, including spiritual teachers and practitioners, accessing the Akashic records requires, bullet point 1, a deep sense of spiritual connection and intention. Bullet point 2, a willingness to attune to the non-physical plane and the record's vibrational frequency. Frequency shifts. Like 432 hertz and stuff like that. Like the magical music that's used in like the evangelical churches. Just asking questions here. Anyway, and bullet point number 4. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Bullet point number 3. A process of meditation, prayer, and other spiritual practices to open the records and access the information. Oh, downloads from heaven, maybe? Like Kat Kerr does. Huh. Interesting. I bet Sid Roth would promote these people. Anyway, moving right along, bullet point number 4. Consent from the individual whose records are being accessed. in cases where seeking information about another person. Remote viewing. Okay. Practical applications. According to the narrative, the Akashic records are believed to be a valuable resource for bullet point number 1, personal spiritual growth and self-discovery. Sounds like Scientology to me a little bit. Bullet point number 2, guidance for life decisions and choices. Let's see. Any motivational speaker there from any multi-level marketing group or evangelical church or yoga guru cults? Bullet point number 3, healing and transformation. Hey, I've heard Kat Kerr talk about transformation, and I think Robin Bullock has too. I could be mistaken. Bullet point number 4, understanding one's soul purpose and destiny. Why am I alive? What is my destiny? What is my purpose in life? What am I supposed to do? What is God's mission for me? All the big questions. They got the answers apparently. And bullet point number 5, last but not least, developing a deeper connection with oneself and the universe. Okay. So in conclusion, the Akashic records are profound and complex spiritual concepts believed to contain the collective energy and experiences of all entities and life forms. While the species of their nature and accessibility vary across different traditions and perspectives, they are widely regarded as a powerful tool for spiritual growth, self-discovery, and personal evolution. So, I guess next I need to go ahead and define what the root races are real quick, and then we'll go ahead and get into chapter 1 real fast. So for a quick look at the 7 root races by Madame Blavatsky, I've gone over to Unarian Wisdom. This is another one of those wacky cults. You can see here, says polar race is the first root race. Hyperborean race is the second. You can say, okay, polar race is a fire race. Hyperborean race, the second root race is air. Lemurian race, the third root race, is water. The Atlantean root race is the fourth, and it's earth. And then the Aryan race, the fifth root race, is ether. So there's the breakdowns. The sixth and seventh root races have not appeared yet. I'm not going to read through all of this. I will try to remember to drop the link for people, or you can reach out to me. Basically, what I want to do is go down here and read what the sixth root race is, because that's where I think they're trying to go with technology and such, especially if you go and look at my School of Hermes video and how it's connected to the development of artificial intelligence and 6G technology. So anyway, according to Unarian Wisdom, the sixth root race, as perceived by Helena Blavatsky, according to C.W. Ledbetter, a colony will be established in Baja California by the Theosophical Society under the guidance of the, quote, masters of the ancient wisdom, end quote. This will take place in the 28th century for the intensive, selective, eugenic breeding of the sixth root race. Eugenic breeding. Where have I heard that before? Joy Division? That selective breeding program that was being run by the Third Reich? Maybe? Anyway, continuing. The Master Moria will physically incarnate in order to be the Manu, or progenitor, of this new root race. Oh, so one of the Ascended Masters is going to be the father of the new root race. They're going to have to have his genetics to make it happen. Interesting. Continuing, it is further believed that by that time the world will be powered by nuclear power, and there will be a single world government which is led by a person who will be the reincarnation of Julius Caesar. Interesting. Especially since how These days, in in 2024, there's a lot of talk about getting rid of nuclear power. So back to the article, the final paragraph on the sixth root race. Further, tens millennia into the future, or tens of thousands of years in the future, a new continent will arise in the Pacific Ocean and will be the home of the sixth root race. California, west of San Andreas Fault, will separate from the mainland of North America and will become the island of California off the eastern coast of the new continent. I got something else I need to look at real quick about California real fast, and then we'll get back to the book.
In 1965, William Branham watched a television program discussing the instability of Los Angeles. Though Branham strictly forbade his cult following from watching television, the Branham family did watch in private, and he mentioned it on a few recordings. In the television program, a scientist was interviewed who stated that Los Angeles would sink within 5 years. This television program apparently became the basis for an alleged prophecy that would be used by his stage persona until the end of his life. Speaking in Los Angeles in April of 1965, William Branham predicted that Los Angeles would sink beneath the ocean, just like the television program predicted. This, according to Branham, would take place before his son, who turns 87 in 2022, was, quote, an old man. In 2008, Branham's son Billy Paul exceeded his life expectancy at the time the alleged prediction was made. After returning to Jeffersonville, Indiana, William Branham alleged that he was speaking under divine inspiration and did not remember what he said. According to Branham, God had spoken through him, calling Los Angeles Capernaum, and warning that the city would sink beneath the ocean. According to that voice that spoke through him, Capernaum was beneath the sea. The problem? Capernaum is not and has no record of ever being beneath the sea. It is one of the tourist attractions promoted by Tourist Israel. Archaeological excavations have revealed 2 ancient synagogues built one on top of the other. Capernaum was spared by the Romans during the Jewish revolt in AD 66 and was referred to as a fertile spring in the writings of Josephus. Many homes were built in the 4th century, and one of the homes was greatly transformed in the 5th century. Evidence shows a constant transforming city since before the days of Christ until about the 5th century. According to all archaeological evidence and historical information available, Capernaum has never been under the sea. You can learn this and more on william-branham.org.
All right, so chapter 1 of Rudolph Steiner's book, The Akashic Record. It is but a small part of prehistoric human experience which can be learnt by the methods of ordinary history. Historic evidence throws light on only a few thousand years, and even what archaeology, paleontology, and geology can teach us is very limited. Added to this limitation is the untrustworthiness which attaches to everything based upon external evidence. Pseudo-history. Gotcha. We need back to the article. We need only consider how the presentation of some event, even if comparatively recent or connected with a nation, is totally transformed on the discovery of new historic evidence. We need but compare the descriptions given by different historians of one and the same thing in order to realize at once how insecure is the ground on which we stand. Everything belonging to the outer world of sense is subject to time, and time destroys what in time arises. Huh. Now, external history depends on what has been preserved to us in time, and no one, dependent only on external evidence, can even say whether that which has been preserved is true. Oh, wow. So, that plays right in with a lot of that stuff I've been hearing from those folks that like that 17th letter of the American alphabet, the English alphabet, the letter after P, as Laura calls them. I'll just call them Q. Um, they talk about how everything you've been told is a lie and that we don't really know the real history because it's all been hidden. Oh, good grief. Anyway, back to the book. But everything which arises in time has its origin in the eternal. And although the eternal is not accessible to sense perception, the paths that lead to a perception of the eternal are available to man. Ascensions into heaven? Maybe. Perception of the eternal cannot be sense perceived. So this requires astral projection, walking on a spiritual plane. Interesting. All right, so moving on. He can so develop the forces that slumber within him as to be able to know this eternal. And the articles on how to attain knowledge of the higher worlds, which have appeared under the articles on how to attain, which have appeared under the articles or under the title of the initiation. The Way of Initiation by Rudolph Steiner, PhD, with a foreword by Annie Besant and some bibliographical or biographical notes of the author by Edward Score. Second edition, price 3 shillings, 10 pence, inclusive of postage. And Initiation and its Results, a sequel to the above. Second edition, 3 shillings, 10 pence, post free, both to be obtained from the Theosophical Publishing Society in London. The method of this training is indicated. So they sell books like Scientology does. All right, gotcha. Oh, and there's a bunch of evangelicals that do the same thing. Just go ask Sid Roth. He'll show you where to find these crazy, wacky, mystical Christian books. Anyway, moving on. In these 2 books, it has been shown that a certain high stage of knowledge man can even penetrate to the everlasting sources that underlie the passing things of time. Let the reader here have patience. These matters can only be dealt with by degrees. It sounds like Solar Temple, that whole Aleister Crowley thing, as well as the operating Thetan degrees or levels in Scientology, or maybe the degrees in the Masonic Lodge. Just asking questions. Back to this. If a man in the way described has developed his power to know, then, as regards knowledge of the past, he is no longer restricted entirely to the outer evidence. Then he can behold that which in the happening is imperceptible to the senses, that which no time can destroy. Remote viewing. That's what this sounds like. He presses on from evanescent history to that which does not pass away. It is true that this history is written in other than ordinary characters. And in the Gnosis, in Theosophy, is called the Akashic record. Only a feeble picture of these records can be given in our language, for it is adapted to the uses of the world of sense. And what we name with it receives at once the character of that world. Thus, a narrator might give to the uninitiated, to one who cannot yet from his own experience conceive himself of the actuality of the distinct spiritual world, the impression of being a mere visionary, if indeed not something worse. So, I've heard an awful lot of stories about ex-evangelicals or evangelicals talking about being able to recognize demons on sight, like Jezebel spirits and so on. Good grief. Back to this. He who has won for himself the power to observe in the spiritual world, there recognizes bygone events in their eternal character. So remote viewing, yoga focus, guru, viewing. I'm drawing a blank on his name. Elizabeth Clare Prophet comes to mind, though. Continuing. They stand before him not as dead witnesses in history, but in the fullness of life. Like talking to the Ascended Masters. Okay. It is back to this. In a certain sense, the past events are played out before him. Those who have learnt to read such a living script can look back into a far more distant past than that which external history depicts. And they can also, by direct spiritual perception, what's that evangelical word there? Discernment. Direct spiritual perception, discernment, describe those matters which history relates in a far more trustworthy manner than is possible by the latter. So it's better to believe what you make up in your mind than it is to believe the facts. Okay. In order to avoid possible error, let it be at once understood that even mental vision is not infallible. I'm glad they pointed that out. Such perception may also be deceived. It may be inaccurate, crooked, topsy-turvy. Even in this domain, nobody, however exalted, is necessarily free from error. Therefore, no one need take exception if communications that spring from such spiritual sources are not always in full accord. That reminds me of that Q conspiracy theory about the yellow cube and being able to see the timeline. And on the Q side, and a brown cube or black cube or something on the Democrat side, I don't know. Move, counter move, something like the what's that theory? Chronovisor, the Catholic chronovisor conspiracy theory, where they can actually look back in time and watch the crucifixion of Christ happen. I don't know. There's some wild things going on out there in the world. Anyway, back to this. But the trustworthiness of such observations is certainly far greater here than in the outer world of sense, and those communications which, bearing on history and prehistoric times, can be given out by the various initiates, agree in their essence. In all mystic schools, there actually exists such history and prehistory, and such absolute agreement has reigned here for thousands of years that it is impossible to compare it with the agreement existing among ordinary historians even for a century. Initiates describe at all times and in all places essentially the same thing. Robin Bullock, Cat Kerr, other false prophets. Interesting. Just thinking out loud on that. Back to this. Almost done with this part. After these preliminary remarks, several chapters of the Akashic record will be repeated here. At the outset, these facts will be described which occurred during the existence of the so-called continent of Atlantis, which lay between America and Europe. This part of the surface of our earth was at one time land. Today, it is land which forms the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Plato still told the last remnant of this land, the island of Poseidonis, lying west of Europe and Africa. I'm going to have to go see if I can find a short clip to throw on here. Back to this. In the little book, The Story of Atlantis by W. Scott Ellis, published by the Theosophical Publishing Society of London, the reader will learn that the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean was once a continent, that for about 1 million years it was the scene of a civilization certainly very different from ours and today, from ours of today, and that the last remnant of this continent was submerged nearly 10,000 years BC. Oh, that would line up about roughly the end of the Younger Dryas period. There's another interesting conspiracy theory. Moving on. Details completing those given in that book and bearing on this hoary civilization will be given here, while the outward evidence of the life of these Atlantean forefathers are more conspicuously the subject of description in the above work. Something will here be said of the soul life, of the inner nature of the conditions under which they lived. That sounds a lot like L. Ron Hubbard's Thetans. The reader, continuing, the reader must therefore go back in thought to a period lying more than 10,000 years behind us, and to a civilization which has existed for many thousands of years. What is here related, however, took place not only on the continent submerged by the waters of the Atlantic Ocean, but also in the neighboring regions that now form Asia, Africa, Europe, and America. And what subsequently happened in these regions was evolved out of that earlier civilization. As the source of the sources of the information to be given here, I am for the present obliged to be silent. He who knows anything at all about such sources will understand why this must be so, but circumstances may arise which will make it possible to speak on this subject very shortly. How much of the knowledge lying hidden in the womb of the Theosophical movement may gradually be communicated depends altogether on the attitude of our contemporaries, and now follows the first of the documents which are to be reproduced, which leads us into chapter 2, which I will save for the next episode. So I'm wanting to make you aware of this particular video. I will try to remember to drop the links for it either under my community tab on YouTube, or I'll put in the description on BitChute or on Rumble. This is a great thing, a great video. This is Flint Dibble, and over on MythVision, and they talk about how Atlantis was actually a thought experiment of Plato, and that it never actually existed, that it was an allegory for, I think it was Troy or Athens, but it was one of those what if kind of things. That's all that was about. I hope that you enjoyed this episode, and I'm looking forward to getting through this project. I will also be getting back to my 1952 project shortly. I'm going to do a lot of production this week. Anyway, I hope that like I said, I hope you enjoyed that. And if you did, if there's somebody that you think might benefit from it, please feel free to share it. If you have not subscribed yet, please do. Give me a thumbs up if you liked what I got. And stick around. Got a lot more good stuff coming. It's summertime, 2024. Even if it was wintertime, I'd still say hydrate, hippie, and take care of yourself, because mental health, genuine mental health, matters. Talk to you on the next video.
Everybody wants to